All right. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. And welcome to another episode, our second episode of the DevOps Insights Forum. I'm Sam Fell. Today we have a fantastic program. It's a bit different than the normal lineup. We're talking about DevOps trends, predictions, and New Year's resolutions. So what is the DevOps Insights Forum? The DevOps Insights Forum is a monthly open space for professionals to chat about software development, delivery, and reliability. And today we're talking about trends, predictions, and New Year's resolutions. Guess what? In the land of DevOps and continuous delivery, things change, right? Continuously. Keeping up with these changes across the different skills that you need to learn, processes that you want to change, the core technology that you want to pick up can be pretty overwhelming. So how do you understand and best position yourself and your organization to take advantage of those shifts that are underway? So we have a fantastic panel. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves in just a second to discuss things like what were the driving forces of DevOps last year, what are some of the opportunities and challenges that we encountered and overcame, and what are the forces that we see shaping the industry in the year to come. And so joining us now, I'm going to ask folks to introduce themselves. Mitch Ashley, could you please introduce yourself?
Happy to. Thanks, Sam. Good to be here with everybody. Mitch Ashley. I'm principal with TechStrong Research, analyst firm that also focuses on the media side of the business, which is one of the platform that we're on. So I'm also CTO with TechStrong Group. So kind of play a dual role there. Thanks.
Wonderful. Happy to have you with us. I'm going to shoot forward here so we get some bigger pictures with some more color in them. And I'm going to ask Judith to go next. Hello, Judith.
Hi, Judith Hurwitz. I'm the president of TechStrong Research, work closely with Mitch, and we focus on really a wide range of the most important technologies that are defining business today.
Wonderful. Judith, we're really happy to have you here. Bruno, you're next.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Bruno Kurtic. I'm the founder and head of strategy here at Sumo Logic. We are a cloud-native platform for observability and security.
Lovely. Thank you, Bruno. Great to see you. Jay Lyman, aloha.
Hi, folks. I'm Jay Lyman. I'm a senior analyst with 451 Research, now part of S&P Global Market Intelligence, and I cover all things DevOps, cloud native, and open source primarily. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We're really glad to have you here. Thanks for joining us again. Chris Kondo from Forrester, welcome.
Hey, Sam. Thanks for having me. Chris Kondo, principal analyst with Forrester, cover DevOps, application development, delivery, some open source, some vendor management stuff, comes to agile delivery, and really happy to be here. Thank you.
Really happy to have you here as well. And last but not least, RJ, hello.
Hey, Sam. Hey, everybody. It's RJ Janendra. I'm a vice president and general manager at ServiceNow. I'm incubating a new business model with new products for site reliability engineering. Really happy to be here today.
Very, very exciting. We're excited to have you here as well. Mitch just put something in the chat. Mitch, thank you for doing that. As I said to everybody, he's the man to follow when it comes to how you want to interact with the audience. This is for you, Mr. and Mrs. Audience Member. We want to make sure that we're giving you information that's valuable. Please feel free to add thoughts, comments, questions directly into the chat. I see people doing that already. I appreciate it. So this forum is for you. Be respectful. People can see your comments. If you are disrespectful, we're going to just have you leave. And we want to make this forum better. This is our second episode. We're going to be doing a lot of these, so make sure you check us out next month as well. We'll be talking about open source, which should be exciting. What happened to our slides? Oh, there they are. So share feedback. If there's something that you like, something that you want to see more of, let us know. We love the feedback. Now, to get us started and get your fingers warmed up, please, some of you are already doing it. Please put where you're coming from in the chat. Let us know where you're joining us from before we jump into all the content. We got folks from all over the world, people from South Africa, people from Poland. I'm loving this. New Mexico, Waterloo. It's fantastic. All right. So let's get started. We got a lot of big brains. Normally we do a readout of some social polls on what people are thinking, but because we have so many amazing brains on this call, I wanted to jump right into sort of the panelist conversation portion. And I see a big grin on Chris's face. So I'm going to start with him. Chris,
Yeah.
what technology inspired you in 2021, and what do you think we'll see more of in 2022?
Well, would it disappoint anyone if I didn't see anything inspirational from a technology perspective?
It
But
would
what
not.
I felt like what I really saw was a realization that, and kind of fueled by the pandemic and the real importance of a digital experience for almost every business, that people really do need to engage in some transformational aspect of their business. They really need to think about getting that digital product line up and running and stop thinking about it as a silo or as a separate part of the business. Your digital experience is really integral to your business, whether it's API management and event-based systems, on the back end, connecting to your supply chain, or whether it's the front end, reaching out to your workers in the field, or your customers. And so really making use of the technology that's available and making use of it to get your transformation moving. I think that's what's inspired me most. Lots of people telling us that they're thinking about project to product thinking. How do I apply product management to software delivery? What do they, how do we start? What does business value even mean when it comes to software delivery? I think all those are great conversations. And what we tell them is that there's plenty of technology to use, just got to use it right.
Interesting. Yeah, I think that's huge. Getting the alignment and using the correct technology for the right purpose, I think, is important. But there is some interesting technology that sort of emerged to help support all that stuff, even if it's just process built on top of existing technology. That's still technologies. That's a great point. I appreciate that. All right, let's move into RJ. And my screen has gone like wackadoodle here. I can't see people's faces anymore, so I'm going to be playing around with that while you're speaking. RJ, what kind of technology did you see that inspired you in 2021?
Yeah, sure thing, Sam. Actually, picking up a little bit on what Chris said, I think technologies that really help businesses improve their customer experience, things like reliability engineering or modern instant response, I think have really come to the forefront. And I'd say that the pandemic, the last couple of years, have really accelerated that digital transition for many businesses. I mean, even my neighborhood vegan joint, Judith, before you had to call in or you should go there to place an order, but now it's online, right? And so keeping the services available and resilient is more important. And also, if you think about what's happening with a ton more applications out there, many through low-code, no-code platforms, or built with microservices, kind of with these two pizza box teams where you build it, you run it. There's sort of increasing emphasis on kind of uptime and the responsibilities that go with that. So I think tools around instant response that facilitate sort of these distributed teams to take on many of the aspects that they need, right? Things like on-call, rotation, collaboration, all instant workflows, all sort of brought together in a single place so they can respond quickly without all the toil. I feel like that's something that's really taking off.
The need for that is becoming ever greater. The complexity of the teams that they're having to deal with is becoming ever greater. These things are going to collide, right? And how do we help those humans to do that? Good technology will help them do that. Awesome. Bruno, looks like you got some ideas here. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I was going to just jump in and prevent you from pointing to somebody else, just because what Chris and Roger really kind of talked about, something that I think really matters. I think we happen to be in this business of helping enterprises digitize, and I find the whole pandemic is becoming an accelerant. It's a discontinuity, I think, in digital transformation. I don't think anybody's going back to behaving in the way they did before the pandemic, because why would you? The things that inspired me are related to what both of you guys said. One is really we're starting to see more and more machine learning actually not be just talk, but actually starting to be able to augment the ability of enterprises to deliver better customer experience, better uptime, better sort of user delight, if you want to think of it that way. And I'm also inspired by another thing that we're seeing more on the security side of sort of operations than on the sort of the ops side of operations. It's called automation, right? And I think that what I think we're going to see in 2022, I think we're going to see actually a combination of these two technologies that's going to help drive better experiences. And I think you're going to see more ML and more automation, and oftentimes working in combination and deciding what to do, not just detecting things that need to be acted upon when something goes wrong, but also deciding what to do in an automated fashion as we detect incidents, detect outages, performance degradations, and things like that.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And machine learning in general, I think, had a pretty good year last year. GPT-3. So always a lot of interest in that, although there are a lot of people now saying that's interesting, but it is baby steps, right? We are everyone always says, true artificial intelligence is 20 years away. Well, it's been 20 years away for how many years, right? But it does feel like I guess maybe consumerization, is that the right word for it, is making that ML, putting that ML to work for consumers in a way that makes things easier for them, I think is a really important part of what I've experienced as a consumer over the past year or a couple years, right? The technology that I have is getting smarter, and sometimes that's more frustrating, right? If the technology is a little bit too smart, but a lot of times the right things just sort of happen, which is helpful. With all the complexity, not only that the ops people are dealing with, but us as humans out in the world with all the complexity that we deal with, having things taken care of for you is really, really nice, right? And having a AI or ML learn the kinds of things that you'd want to have happen, that's quite striking. Like that's pretty cool stuff. Awesome. All right. Anything else you wanted to share there, Bruno, or should I pass it to?
No, I mean, just again to play off of what you said, we're also getting a lot more kind of traditional enterprises asking us about, how they should be applying their data science teams in the sort of workflow of DevOps, SRE, all of this, which is really interesting. Never did we have these conversations a couple of years ago, right? Now, all of a sudden, there are data science teams that exist, they're doing work, and they're trying to apply it to these things that matter to their customer experience, right? Yeah. And that's really interesting. Like, we're actually getting real inbound demand on capabilities that allow them to apply those teams productively.
Right. Yeah. The ML ops, right? That whole domain of, you have data pipelines, you have to find the data, you have to nurture the data, you have to normalize the data, enrich it, all this stuff. It's a practice, and it's sort of a dark science that I think that there's an opportunity for folks to sort of make more concrete, the way that folks did with DevOps and continuous delivery and pipelines, right? Data pipelines are pretty similar, and there's a lot of value being created by those pipelines. So that's good. Ooh, Patrice just talked about value stream management. Ears up. I love that. But Chris, unfortunately, you already spoke, so we'll have to.
That's all right. No problem. That's plenty of time. We have a whole hour.
That's right. We have time. We can come back around. All right, Judith, let me know, what are your thoughts? What did you see last year?
So what I saw last year is the beginning of real, I'd say, the industrialization of computing. And I think it's important because obviously computing isn't new, and a lot of the technologies that seem like they're shiny objects are actually things that have been around for decades, but we're getting to the point where we're putting them into practice and really industrializing them, whether it's DevOps or cloud or ML. And I think we're only at the beginning of that. So one of the things that the trend that I see for this coming year is the creation of what I'm calling hybrid teams. Before it was, well, I'm a professional in DevOps or I'm a data scientist, whatever, your area of expertise. And to be successful, we have to see the creation of hybrid teams where the data scientist understands enough about how the business operates and what data is actually within the business to make a difference. And if you just look a couple of years ago, data scientists didn't really want to talk about the specific business strategy or issues. They wanted to talk about what cool algorithms they could find. So I think that is a big issue that I'm seeing. And we're going to see management teams that are specifically hybrid leaders. So they have to know enough about all of these different areas to be able to direct things. So I see that as a big trend. The other big trend is this whole area of automation. You know, there are things that can be automated very successfully. ML ops is one of those areas. So there are probably hundreds of thousands of different combinations of things that you can automate, but it's finite. You don't have a trillion different ways that you can manage a network. So those are the areas where we're seeing the first industrialization or commercialization. Another issue is how much can you actually automate? You can't automate everything. You have to know where you can automate because it's very predictable, and where you have what we call augmented intelligence, where you augment automation with human knowledge, and I see that as a big trend. And I see that Chris is mentioning edge computing. I see that as an extension of networking and cloud, and I think that's been happening for a while, but it's definitely becoming a key trend.
Yeah, Joe in the audience, he's got some really interesting things. He's mentioning cell-based Internet of Things, which is, I mean, this man is living far out in the future. Maybe not. It'd be exciting. One of the things that I'm actually thinking of, folks in the audience who are listening, hit me up on LinkedIn or whatever and let me know what you think. But I'm thinking about asking folks in the audience to join us because we don't have a lockup on being intelligent. There's so many smart people out there, and getting more voices from more people in the community would be awesome. So I definitely appreciate all the comments in the chat.
What do you think cell-based IoT means? I have three things I'm thinking of. A cell is a group of things. A cell is a cellular tower, or do you mean biologically inside my cells? Which one are we talking about here?
I say cell-based instead of 5G because I live in reality.
Okay, all right.
See, I just posted about that. I think software-based radios, the whole network is turning to software, and it's moving where it lives. You know, the cell tower of last year is not the cell tower of this year.
That's right.
That's changing.
A lot of places. That's a great point. They are bringing the networks closer to the compute, right? Google with Tesla or with SpaceX, right? Their Starlink is now inside of a Google. The base stations are now inside of Google data centers. All the different big mobile vendors, Verizon, I know, has a big effort underway to bring compute right down near their base stations. So that is big. And again, that's right back to what RJ was saying earlier about reliability, right? Performance of these applications, making that seamless experience, customer experience for people. That's awesome. Okay, very good. Jay, we have not heard from you yet. What are your thoughts? What's inspiring to you? What have you seen that's inspiring, or what do you think you're going to see?
Well, I think, riffing on a little bit of what folks have already said, and particularly what Judith said about hybrid teams, I'm kind of interested in, my big trend for 2021 was DevSecOps, right? And we've tracked more security elements going into more DevOps releases consecutively for a few years now over time. And we're also expanding beyond just vulnerability scanning to include different types of application security testing. Now I'm hearing a lot about software supply chain. Right? There's been some drivers there. So the DevSecOps drivers continue. But we still see it's not easy, right? There are still silos. I think it's about 40% of organizations say the IT security team and the DevOps team collaborate on these DevSecOps requirements. Another 30% say, they're working on those independently. So indicative of those continued silos. And I think sort of back to that term hybrid teams, what we've seen in successful DevOps thus far is sort of this, walking in their shoes for a bit. And, before I was an IT admin, I was a software developer. Before I was a coder, I did work in IT management. And now we're seeing the same thing in security. Cross-discipline teams are going to have a better edge, because I think we're still trying to figure out who's in charge. Traditionally, security has owned security throughout the organization, right? Now you've got these DevOps teams saying, well, we're going to do this, that, and the other thing. And the key to all of it is that it's automated and abstracted so that it makes good on not slowing developers down. And that can be sort of an antiquated thing to say, oh, security slows us down, let's not bother with it. Because I think, it's not, you can see the need to reduce risk by the things that happen just about every day in the news. And so, and developer attitudes are changing towards security, but there's still going to be those silos, and it's kind of a similar thing with the data scientist. It's another sort of new stakeholder where you want to be able to give them self-service so they can spin up the data modeling environments on their own, spin them down, right? And so we're seeing sort of the collaboration that was the genesis of DevOps between the devs and the ops teams is now spreading to more security teams, data science teams, product and business teams. And then that kind of gets into sort of what I'm expecting to see. And that's where we see more of that analytics, AI, and ML going into DevOps, the same way we've seen kind of security do that. So, yeah.
Do you see that? And do you see that driving the AI, ML, driving more collaboration between the teams? Do you see that optimizing within each of the silos or the stovepipes of the machine?
Yeah, I think it'll be similar to the security story, where you do see collaboration and teams that are proactive, that have successfully done DevOps and have sort of successfully addressed the stakeholder spread with DevOps that, by the way, includes management and leadership now. And that's part of that pandemic speed up of digital transformation by 3 to 5 years. DevOps is very much on their radar, that management and leadership, and getting more budget because it's a part of digital transformation, and that's recognized now. So I kind of see the same thing happening where, you've got some collaboration, but you still got silos, and you still got organizations where this is still sort of a novel idea that teams that didn't have to do anything, have to communicate before, now have to be working together remotely.
Yeah. And you mentioned something earlier. You said, well, I don't want to work with the security people because it slows me down, right? If you're a DevOps person, a dev person. But if you start the process knowing that that's what you need to do, and you bake it in early enough, then you save yourself a lot of that pain. I mean, we all know this, right? But getting to that point organizationally is really hard for people to break out of those patterns that they have.
And kind of moving on the break the build approach, right? Guardrails to help, policy enforced guardrails to give you the flexibility that you need, but to keep you on the road that we've paved for you. And so I think that's kind of where the industry is. And the break the build is kind of where the security slows us down. I mean, I've heard stories about DevOps teams. They go to the security team. Here's what we're doing. Can you help us out? Security team says, okay, we'll give us 3 months. DevOps team says, never mind. We'll write our own security framework. So, it's not easy. But we can use sort of what's happened with the devs and the ops to help us guide us into what we need to do with security teams, data science teams, product teams.
And just for a second, I think spot on, Jay. I think that part of the reason what I'm observing in the market is that one of the reasons for this collaboration is also, migration of the workload where it used to run to where it's going to run in the future and where it runs now, right? Meaning from on-prem to the cloud, and the whole security paradigm is shifting from I'm going to secure the perimeter, and then the application needs know nothing about security, right?
Right.
At least that was the hope, right? It was wrong, even in on-premise world, but particularly now when you run your workload, your mission-critical customer-facing revenue-generating workload, you run it up in the cloud, third-party controlled infrastructure, porous infrastructure, new infrastructure layers, your microservices technology, all the stuff that the traditional security team doesn't necessarily even know how to deal with. So I think both the security teams need the devs and the DevOps people to solve security issues, and so do the developers and DevOps people need the security team to advise them. So I think it's a very much a symbiotic, much more tight collaborative environment, and they're forced into it, I think, because of the architectural changes.
Yep.
I think one of the important things that you just mentioned is microservices. And if you think about the idea that you've got, maybe you could have 1,000 microservices across your organization. How do you know that each of those services is secure? How do you know that they're not bugs within one of those services that you now deploy to all of your customers and suppliers across your software supply chain? And I don't think that we have really dealt with that in 2021, but we will have to in 2022.
And especially when those microservices are changing on a daily basis, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you could somehow attest that they were in good shape yesterday, the next day, you have no idea.
Yeah.
And invariably, there will be failure. That's inevitable with the rate of change.
Yep.
And then how do you recover quickly to it? And I agree with you, Bruno, in the sense that this collaboration between security and the development teams, it's going to be born out of necessity.
Mm-hmm.
Just as it happened with operations, which is just as I've talked to our customers, essentially ops teams are not able to keep up with the amount of microservices, with the amount of applications that are getting so it almost is, this is the only sort of path. It just relies on how quickly do you realize it, and then start kind of making the changes organizationally and culturally to kind of get equipped for it.
Well, I'd like to challenge us. I think we no longer need to or should think of things in terms of incremental amounts of time. It's not change hourly, change daily, change weekly. It's change constantly. Anything at any time can change anywhere in the stack. Whether it's how we, do SRE or how we design security into a certain part of the, we have to assume it's no longer a solid, it's now a fluid. And that's the environment we're working in. We got to learn to swim, not run.
You're scaring the executives, Mitch.
Well, that's the reality. That's the world we're in. No.
So, hearing so many good things, I want to touch back around on the T-shaped people, right? Project to product. So many different things have been mentioned. Mitch, I have not yet asked you. You just shared some thoughts commenting on someone else, but do you have any thoughts, larger thoughts about this topic that you'd like to share with the audience?
Yeah, I do. And folks have done a really nice job of kind of tying some things together. And I posted something in the comments about that. I'm going to pick one technology and highlight it for a certain reason, and that's open telemetry, open source. And why I highlight that? Yes, it's in the part of the industry, of course, Sumo is in that's sponsoring this. But the reason is when I first got into open source, it was I'm the author of it and I'll go create a company for my open source and then kind of profit off of it. And this is the first time where you can almost foresee a real challenge to private agents. That is now under threat because we have something like open telemetry that's being collaborated on by a lot of companies with a shared interest, because we can't all write an agent for everything for every situation at all time, and have worked collaboratively to create open telemetry, and it's got a real great trajectory, I think. So it's an example of open source in a highly collaborative form that I think has really changed and made observability, tracing, all of these things really possible on a much larger scale.
Nice. Yeah, I love that. We're definitely big believers in open telemetry and having people own their own telemetry, because you can really lean into it then. And then back to a comment that Judith made earlier, what really becomes important is the ML, is what you do with that data. How do you make sense of that data? And so working with vendors who work with open telemetry and have good ML on the back end to tie all that stuff together is, I think, a really, really important point. And you see that more of that coming in 2022?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's really kind of hit its stride and really accelerating at this point. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Great things in future
absolutely.
for it.
And I love to see the amount of companies that are leaning into it, right? That it not necessarily good for their proprietary business, but it's good for the consumer. It's good for the audience.
You could argue that no one company can keep up with it now. Can't keep up with open telemetry. You have to participate. It's almost reached that level of momentum. If not, it will.
So what I think, so RJ just had to go find a power cord. I think one of the technologies that he would like to have better in 2022 is more capacity in our batteries, which is interesting that is something that that's been a focus for people. And I think for me, I love higher capacity batteries. So I think that is good technology. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. Let's talk about something else. So what business process or strategy inspired you in 2021, and what do you think we'll see more of? So I think we might have covered some of this in the last one, but we can roll through again and see if there's anything new that somebody wants to add. I'm going to start not with RJ since he's powering himself back up. I'll start this time. I will start with Mitch since I went to you last.
Did you say Mitch? I didn't.
I did.
Okay.
You're up.
Yeah, I think it's sort of a plus and a minus. I think we're all tired of digital transformation as a term, overused and over everything, right? So what's really inspired me is the move to digital engagement at all levels. It's all about enabling digital engagement, but not always at the cost of personal engagement. There is still going to AWS and talking with people, doing business deals, working the booth, all those things still play as well. But I think that truly is transforming us as a societies across the world, and we interact with each other, and it's really fueling a lot of things that we're all working on. So I think that's hugely impactful.
And I think so. We talked. The last slide was really like what technology allowed did inspire you, but from a process, customer experience sort of process, there's a lot of technology that goes into making a seamless experience. I had the opportunity to try and fix my kid's computer, and in order to do so, I needed to reach out to the manufacturer of that computer and get them to help me. And I've done this with lots of different vendors. I'm not going to say the names of the different vendors. Some of them, it's horrible, where you're on call for like on a hold forever. And this vendor, I logged my information on a website. I got a phone call back in about 5 minutes. I had someone who's qualified to help me troubleshoot the problem. It was an amazingly good experience for something that I was dreading having to go and do. And so when you think about applying that technology and applying because there was probably some pretty good ML or something going on for them to direct me to the right place and get to the right person who could help me solve my problem. But all that just created this really, really good customer experience that makes me want to be a customer of that brand longer. So these are the types of things I think that technology is helping us with. You can have a really good experience with one person at a store, but that's not a repeatable turn the crank type of experience. That's one person being a hero or having good customer service. But when you can manufacture that, and as sort of Judith talked about, industrialize that process to be able to serve all these people, that's wonderful. My mom talks about like, well, I'm going to give the folks at Google a call because I don't understand anything. And I sort of laugh. I'm like, well, you could try calling somebody at Google so for them to explain it to you, but that's not how it works. But that should be how it works. And technology should, I think, allow us to be able to do that. So I'm loving seeing some vendors really lean into that. All right. So that was me just doing a monologue. Sorry. Let's switch to Jay.
You're allowed.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were just going there, Sam. I was just letting you. No, we sort of talked about this new paradigm, and this presents some challenges to organizations. And one of the things that we're seeing is the application of cloud native methodology to traditional applications. on-prem applications, sort of these existing things. And I think bridging that sort of new, wonderful app experience, service experience that you had, Sam, with kind of the old ways of doing things, the old apps, the old businesses. I mean, and a couple of examples are, used to be kind of a big deal to be able to cash a check with your phone, right? It was all the new online banks were doing that. Now every bank has to do that. And this is another example of where, digital transformation, getting really hammered here on the comments, perhaps rightfully so. But it's not just some BS that analysts
We're with you.
talk, right? It means something. It means that you're able to provide that personalized, delightful experience for your consumers. That's kind of what the end result is. And so I think, the other good example is the buying a car from the dealership, right? It's like, well, why would you need an app, in a day or in a week to completely buy a car, without going into the dealership? I mean, some people still like to do that. And that, with the pandemic, that was kind of a sliver of the market. You could do that before, but it wasn't a very big part of the market. And it went from, a sliver to pretty much all of the market overnight. We saw that
But people want the experience, and they want the confidence of knowing that there's the app and I hit my thing and I got my thing.
And they don't want to deal with the old, I got to go talk to my manager and, the sitting down there. It's funny. We went in and bought a car with my daughter. And after several hours, I said to my wife, and I'm like, why are we always hungry when we're doing this? I'm like starving. If they gave me something to eat here, I would probably spend another $10,000. But, people want to avoid that thing that, oh my God, we got to go to the dealership. No, go online, look at it. They'll deliver the paperwork in the car. And, in 40 minutes, you'll be off driving on your new car. So, but I think that's, we're going to see more of that. And that is successful digital transformation. And, it's going to be a matter of survival, not just, how long can we put this off?
I like it. And I'm seeing a lot of comments, and I'm going to echo them because I think they're all spot on. And Mitch, I think you got the ball rolling. Digital transformation is an ongoing thing. Right? We should just call it continuous transformation, because that's what's happening. Businesses are transforming. If you're not, then you're going to die, right? If you're not evolving, adapting, you won't be around for very long. So keep it up, people. I love it. All right. Thank you for that. Chris, what are you thinking about?
Well, we re-engaged with the VSM community, and we've been interviewing, consultants in the space, end users of different technology platforms, vendors, really trying to reset the baseline that we kind of thought about a few years ago when we started writing about it. And one of the interesting things is there's a number of companies that are using the terminology value stream, but I'm not necessarily sure if they are using it in a business sense, or if they understand that there's a difference between a business value stream and I'm delivering value to a customer. It has a result, an outcome that results in, business value, monetary value, or I'm shrinking the time to delivery and time to market, and I have these metrics. And so what's kind of interesting is, maybe I'm partially to blame, because when I first wrote about it, I was thinking about, hey, how do we get metrics and observability maybe on the software delivery process to really understand, as an engineer, do I understand why I'm writing this particular feature? Do I understand how to measure its success or failure? And, how do I measure that value? Thinking back to my days as a developer when we had clear objectives that were measurable with KPIs and whatnot. But then, other analysts came, from Forrester and other places, like, hey, what about the business value and the fact that the value stream isn't the same thing as your software delivery pipeline? And so it's very interesting, depending on where you come from. If you come from a portfolio or a business space, you really think about the business value you're delivering as a value stream. And if you're thinking about it from a developer's perspective, actually, they don't quite think about it that much, but maybe a release manager or an operations perspective, you're thinking about just orchestrating and managing, all the different streams coming at you and getting out the door. And so I think what's kind of inspiring me is that people are thinking about value, that's at least it's in the sentences they're using. And so that would imply that they're also thinking about outcomes. And so I find that very inspirational, that however they come to it, whether, there are some people saying, hey, you can't have technology without tools. You know what? I've seen people buy a tool and say, guess what? We're not getting the most out of this because we're not thinking about it right. This tool's measuring all these numbers, and we never even thought we could get data on software delivery. And guess what? It actually does make a difference on time to market. It actually is showing us that we have all these backlogs that are building up, or that we're working on technical debt and nothing new, or just new things and technical debt's building up. We need to think about this more as a product team than just a bunch of silos. So sometimes the technology can lead you in the right direction. It's not just that you're buying technology and blindly using it, although that happens every day. And it's also, it also has to be more than highfalutin ideas about, we're going to deliver business value, and not really have any concrete way of actually measuring it. So I see that as a very good thing. It's inspiring me that people are coming at it. They recognize that value is important, that software is part of that value chain, that product teams, that developers, they all need to work together to kind of get that value out the door. So that's inspiring me. And I think we'll see more of it moving forward. Yeah.
Chris, one thing that's really great about your work on this is that while you started sort of thinking it in a software context, I think at the same time, because of all the acceleration and also convergence of so many things, the business is saying, if I'm going to put in $1 here, am I going to get $10 out?
Right.
Because software is critical. It is not operational. It is critical to my business strategy, whether it's competing or going after something new or defending or whatever strategy it is. It's in the plan now. It's not just something we need to do. So I think that may be in part why folks took what you did and worked on it and said, well, hey, this applies kind of like value chain. We used to think about value chains in business, right? But really thinking about value in terms of software and the role that it plays in the organization.
Yes.
Now, plus one, what you're saying there, in the sense that, the concept of value chain, it's been part of the lean movement for a while, like lean manufacturing, but being applied now to software. And I think the related sort of shift is that project to product, which is, companies are realizing that what they're creating are digital products. And to do that, the sort of project-oriented approach of where you pull a project team together and then execute the project, and then you disband everybody and they go off and work on other projects. You don't learn that way, right? And so we really need these durable product teams that can learn and experiment and evolve the digital products. And so definitely seeing this idea. And also, if you think about software development, for the longest time, a little bit of a black art. Like if you're in sales, you have very quantified sort of metrics what you're delivering to if you're in marketing. But from a software perspective, it's always been a little bit sort of kind of not well measured. And so this whole notion of kind of value and understanding how to quantify it and then be able to measure and figure out where the bottlenecks are, it's super interesting. And a little bit of a plug for the Value Stream Management Consortium. Chris, I know you're involved with that group. So again, it's thought leaders, it's end users, vendors coming together to build more awareness around this and sort of standardize how we think about value stream management. So I think that's definitely something to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
So I'd like to bring up, get us back to the topic of business process, because, what was it, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, everyone was talking about managing business process. And then we went over to talk about, software development, continuous delivery. But in a sense, what's inspiring me, and a lot of the discussion so far has been about the whole issue of process. Sam, when you talked about the process of dealing with a vendor, that wasn't necessarily only because they had ML, but they thought about the business process involved in how to make customers satisfied. So I think we need to get back to thinking first about what is the business process of my organization. And I'd like to state here and now, silos kill. So silos in business process, silos in software, silos in data, silos in security. So I do think that what's inspiring me is the idea that let's get back to truly thinking about business process. And as I put it in a comment, that that when we're thinking about digital transformation, I think it started out from an idea of panic. Oh my God, I am losing out. How can I transform my business? So it was a cry for help.
Yeah. Yeah. And I one of the things I think RJ was mentioning it is when you have tools, regardless of whether they're bad or good, but if they're consistent and they're giving you signals that you can then respond to, that's value. There's value there if you can get consistent things. And I used to, like, I love DevOps, and I love sort of the way people think about approaching problems in an iterative fashion. And as long as you're able to do that, whatever that problem is, you're able to achieve a good outcome as long as you're iterating on making it better. And Judith, I think your point about focusing on what's the experience you're trying to create, that end experience, and not saying, well, we're just going to go through this now, but the customer won't have to do that. Well, they will. And right. So don't just like gloss over the crummy parts, trying to get to the part that you fixed and made good. Realize that there are still bottlenecks that you're trying to sort of figure out. We've got 15 more minutes left. I'm going to have Bruno answer this question if there's something that he wants to share, and then I'm going to go to the predictions, the New Year's resolutions, which is the fun part. So what are you thinking, Bruno? What business processes or strategies inspired you, and what do you think you're going to see more of?
So, I think we touched on this, maybe not with these exact words, but shift left is something that, inspired me in 2021. And I think we're going to see more of it in 2022, particularly because, when we are thinking about, again, reliability, customer experience, when we're serving our customers, we oftentimes forget that most of the things that happen in production are caused before production. And I think people are starting to think about measuring and monitoring the efficiency and the effectiveness of their software development processes. They're starting to leverage things like DORA metrics and trying to understand how good are they at shipping code, how good are they recovering from failures and errors that they cause, and all these things. I think that's an interesting development. It's not that it's new, but people are starting to talk about it explicitly and realizing, a lot of companies are now realizing that they've been eaten by software. They're realizing that optimizing that process, pre-production process, is optimizing their potentially biggest resource and biggest cost center. So I think that's exciting, and I think we're going to see more and more of that.
Yeah, getting the software to production where it provides value is the whole point, right? So if you can't do that efficiently, then you're not doing a great job. Awesome. Okay. So last but not least, and we only have 12 minutes for this, so we're going to need to keep it sort of tight to folks. I want everyone in the audience, you folks have been so great about keeping the conversation going. What is your DevOps New Year's resolution? Put it in the chat. I'm going to ask the panelists to start with theirs. Who have I not started with? Someone raise their hand. Who wants to go first? New Year's resolution. If you don't raise your hand. Jay, thank you.
I'll go for it. I'm just sort of accepting that the DevOps definition is written in pencil. And I used to push back on folks when they said DevOps is developers doing their own operations. And I'd say, no, DevOps is the devs collaborating with IT operations teams, right, coming together. But turns out a lot of the folks I'm talking to, DevOps is developers doing their own operations, particularly in the context of Kubernetes. And we tested this in a survey, and it was about 30% said that DevOps is devs doing their own operations. So I'm going to keep putting the question the definition rather than, we'll sort of give our own. I still think it's primarily devs working with IT ops, but it's changing with changes in the technology, changes in the market. So we'll see what DevOps becomes.
Nice.
I'm open.
I like that. I think that's cool. All right. Thank you, Jay. Who's next? Chris, you're next.
As I'm thinking up my prediction. So we've been doing some interesting research on like misinterpretation. I actually put it into the chat we looked at the Spotify model and it looks like everyone reports to a product manager. And now the product manager's pulling the hair out of her head trying to figure out how the hell do I evaluate a software engineer? And, Charlie and I, and especially Charlie, has been trying to re-educate folks on it's an overlay. The engineers still report to an engineering manager and up the chain. You can have a silo, of say expertise or domain expertise, but it doesn't mean it lives in a isolated silo. There's a collaborative overlay that there's a product value that flows over that. And maybe, you get promoted based on how good you are as a software engineer, but you get your bonus based on did you meet your business objectives or some combination of incentives and whatever, career growth. All of those things I think are complicated because so many enterprises are looking for a handwritten recipe of exactly how they should do stuff. And then when they see it, they follow it to a T, and then they don't understand why they screwed up. It's really quite interesting. And so, I used to always tell people, don't work for Agile, make Agile work for you. Don't work for DevOps, make DevOps work for you. It's really about trying to understand how those things can influence and make your culture stronger and better in a collaboration. You can't be Spotify, so don't try to be. Try to be who you are, apply those principles to you and be better at it. And so my hope for the year is that when people think about value and they think about business value and delivering value, all that, whatever, they understand how it cuts across your organization. How can they better collaborate together and just deliver on their promise to their customers.
Nice. Love it. Something for us to hope for in the new year. I like that. All right. Anyone want to volunteer? I'm going to pick someone again. Judith, you're up.
Yeah, I'll volunteer. So my New Year's resolution is to see more organizations focus on their bottlenecks. So what does that mean? I remember many years ago hearing a management consultant say you should cherish your bottlenecks, because if you focus on your bottlenecks, then you come up with solutions that help your organizations grow and change. If you only focus on, look how great we are, our teams are just working great, and we've made the developers into operations professionals, aren't we fabulous? But it's really focusing on how do we fix those bottlenecks so our organization becomes better and not just following the latest shiny object.
Yeah, the cargo cult stuff, chasing after technology, not so smart. It's also value stream management, by the way, helps you identify which bottleneck is the one you should care about. Because, yeah, right. Chris is smiling because if you're, pre-optimizing before the bottleneck, you haven't solved anything. You're just loading the bottleneck up more. Lovely. Okay. Who wants to volunteer next?
I can go.
RJ.
I would say, bringing more ops into DevOps, right? So what initially started as agile operations about a dozen years ago, I think for the last decade or so has been really kind of the pre-deployment has been heavily emphasized. And if you look at a lot of the DevOps platforms out there, it's all about CI/CD and how many deployments are you doing. But really, I think if we can get a little bit more emphasis on post-deployment and elevate those workflows as well, we can help to restore some balance to DevOps and also in the universe.
I like it. All right. Bruno and Mitch, which one of you wants to go next?
I'll go next, I guess.
All right, Bruno, bring it home.
All right. So for me, I think kind of the New Year resolution kind of in two buckets. One is I kind of wish and hope that everybody around me that I work with and everywhere else starts understanding the power of the developer. I think I personally, it is my mission to help folks in my company and elsewhere sort of develop the developer affinity, because I do think that, devs have more power in today and will have in the future as sort of we continue to embed technology into everything that we do. So I think the key word for me for next year is developer affinity. And also to that, what developers love and other things, but I'm going to just mention one specific thing is open standards, open telemetry, things that really matter and are helping us sort of all come together around the set of standards that we can operate sort of these mission critical applications and services. So to me, again, everything centers around the developer affinity.
I like it. I like it. All right, Mitch.
I'm going to bookend Bruno with ops is cool. Maybe it's never been, but ops is cool now. And I mean that sincerely. And I agree with you about developers too. But SRE is one of the most fantastic things I think that's happened for operations teams, giving people, it's no longer just bad developers go write test scripts or whatever, or ops scripts, those kind of fallacies. And I think also observability and tracing and things that I mentioned earlier, it is, this idea of DevOps has raised a rising tide raises all boats, has really brought to the forefront, and we have some research on this too that validates this. The role of ops and is really changing, and how it's viewed is changing as well, which I think is absolutely fantastic. And I hope we can all help make that happen.
I like it. I'm not sure if the analogy is perfect, but who's better equipped to take care of that code, and who's better equipped to make decisions about that code than the people who are creating it? And so I love that that focus on the developer, on the artists, and the architects who are putting that stuff together, and again making their lives easier as we build out more and more of this stuff in more and more locations with more and more potential modes of failure. You need a strong team of people. That's why I love that whole conversation about not having the I-shaped people. The DevOps Institute talks about the T-shaped people, right? Having broad skills and then going very deep in one or two locations. You round out your team. You get a broader sense, and not just in skills, but in different, every type of voice, different kind of everything. You get a better perspective when you have a more inclusive, more diverse set of people on the team. So I really want to thank all of our panelists for joining us for this, taking their time out of their busy days to just join us and speak about what they saw, what they're seeing, what they're hoping for. I'm looking forward to a fantastic new year, and see everybody hopefully next year. We'll do the same thing. Thanks everybody for joining us. Come back and join us again next month. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam.
All right.
Thanks, everybody. Nice talking to you.
Everybody.
Bye.
Be well.